Description: Eyewitnesses described the big gray man as an extremely tall, thin figure, over 10 feet tall, with dark skin and hair, long arms, and broad shoulders. However, most encounters are auditory or sensory rather than visual. Hikers often report hearing footsteps crunching on ground behind them, feeling an overwhelming sense of dread, or sensing an unseen presence in the mist. Notable sightings: 1891, J. Norman Colley, a respected mountaineer and professor. Colley recounted an experience near Ben Macdouey summit, where he heard footsteps matching his own but could see no one. The experience left him so unnerved that he fled the area. 1943, Alexander Tunyon. While descending Ben Macdouey in misty conditions, Tunyon reported hearing footsteps and, upon seeing a looming figure, fired his revolver 3 times before fleeing. 1945, Pete Densham. During World War II rescue work, Densham experienced strange noises, a tightening sensation around his neck, and an oppressive atmosphere, prompting him to leave the area hastily. The summit. The wind was already howling when Thomas McCrae reached the halfway cairn on Ben Macdouey. It was early October, and the cairngorms wore a cap of low gray mist, blurring the divide between sky and stone. The trail markers vanished one by one behind him, swallowed in fog as thick as soup. He paused to sip lukewarm tea from a thermos and checked the GPS, but the signal flickered. He was alone, deliberately so. After his divorce and the burnout from 3 years of ER shifts in Aberdeen, he'd started hiking solo again. It was therapeutic, he told himself, meditative. But even now, with his boots planted firm and his breath ghosting in the air, something felt off. The silence between gusts of wind was too deep, not peaceful, unnatural. By the time he reached the summit plateau, the mist was a living thing. It clung to his clothes, soaked into his hair, and danced just out of headlamp range like it was watching. That's when the footsteps began. Crunch, crunch, crunch. Not his. These came between his own steps. Measured, deliberate, just a beat behind. He turned sharply, expecting to see another hiker, maybe someone lost or injured, but the landscape was empty. The summit cairn loomed ahead like a tombstone. He kept walking, heart thudding louder than the wind now. Another crunch, then another. He paused. So did the footsteps. His hand started shaking. He'd read the stories before, Colley, Tunyon, the others. Ben Macdouey had a reputation, even among hardened mountaineers. But he'd never believed it, not until now. A shape moved in the fog, just for a second. Tall, gray, vaguely humanoid. It didn't walk so much as glide. Thomas ran. The terrain was treacherous. Slabs of stone slick with moisture. Hidden holes waiting to twist an ankle. He stumbled, swore, kept moving. The footsteps followed, closer now, faster. And then the sound stopped. Not faded. Stopped. He turned again. The mist parted briefly, just enough to show him what he didn't want to see. A figure, 10 feet tall, its surface indistinct like smoke clinging to form. No face, no features, but it was watching him, and it was waiting. When Thomas woke up at the foot of the hill hours later, his compass was broken, his GPS dead, and his mind fractured. He had no memory of descending the mountain, no injuries, just a vague sense of suffocating dread. He never hiked again. 3 months after Thomas McCrae's descent from Ben Macdouey, his sister Eslaw returned to the mountain. She'd grown tired of his haunted silence, the sleepless nights, the way he flinched at the sound of heavy boots in the stairwell. He never spoke about what happened. He just quit his job, sold his gear, and withdrew into himself. But Isla was different, analytical, rational. A geology PhD student at the University of Edinburgh. She didn't believe in ghosts or legends. She believed in data, in faults and folds, in what the ground could tell her. Still, she had to know. She planned her trip for late January, when tourists were few and the weather was merciless. She packed, well, satellite phone, emergency beacon, crampons, an avalanche probe. She even logged her location with mountain rescue before heading out. The first half of the climb was uneventful, just wind, cold, and the crunch of snow underfoot. But around the south top, her instruments started glitching. Her phone refused to boot. The barometer dropped fast. And then came the noise, a low-frequency hum she felt more than heard, like pressure in her skull. At first she thought it was wind in a rock cleft, until it started pulsing. She froze, one mittened hand still clutching her ice axe. Behind her, the wind died entirely. In its place came the softest possible sound. Breathing, not hers. She turned slowly, ice rattling in her jacket. Nothing, just white, but then barely perceptible footprints. Deep, rounded imprints in the snow where no one had walked, leading directly toward her and stopping 5 feet away. She took a cautious step back. The air felt heavy, charged, as if the mountain itself were holding its breath. Then a shadow moved, massive and slow, just beyond the edge of visibility. The kind of movement you catch out of the corner of your eye and hope was just mist. Only it wasn't. It stood still for a long moment, not approaching, not receding, watching, and then it began to mimic her breath. In, out, exactly in rhythm. Isla didn't run. She turned, fast but controlled, and began a slow, careful descent. The breathing continued for another 100 meters, always behind her, never closer, never farther. She made it to base camp at dusk, shaking, frostbitten, but alive. When asked by mountain rescue if she needed a doctor, she said no. But later, alone in her tent, she tore her research notes from her field journal and burned them in the stove. Every page. She never returned to the cairngorms. But sometimes in the depth of Scottish winter, when the fog rolls down from the peaks like a living thing, people still report the sound of breathing where no one stands. And every so often, a climber comes down changed, silent, gaunt, unable to look back at the mountain. Some say it's the altitude. Others call it madness. But those who've seen the big gray man of Ben Macdui never speak his name again.